You ready?
Hey, welcome back everyone to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 134. I'm here with my co-facilitator, Lino.
Hello, everyone. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, brother. Yourself?
I am well.
All right. For those of you who want to follow along, the doc is in the description beneath the video. Please hit the like button as you come in, and we will get started. Let me real quick share my screen. All right. So the first item on the docket, CGTN, eco-friendly toilet in South Korea turns waste into energy and wealth. A research and development team from South Korea's Yosan National Institute of Science and Technology has recently developed an eco-friendly toilet which can turn waste into clean energy and even wealth. The toilet utilizes vacuum suction and it requires only about 500 liters of water to flush the excrete, the excrete to a microbial reactor nearby. Um, so basically, what this toilet does is they're repurpose um, repurposing the waste from humans in the toilet and actually giving you tokens as a form of compensation for doing so. What do you think about that, Lino?
Um, that's nice. I I imagine what they're doing with the waste is using it as fuel, and thereby sharing the revenue with the people who gave them the fuel.
Hmm.
That is nice because you everybody, to phrase it, children's book, everybody poops. So you you're getting paid, and this is the this is you're getting paid, and the tokens you are getting paid can be used on, I guess, the school campus for food. So it's a loop. It's a circle. You know, you get paid to poop, and you get paid for it, and the money you get can be used to buy food, which in turn you poop again, and you get paid to buy some more food.
Hmm.
That's cool. That now that is an idea.
Yeah, I didn't catch how they were going to use the waste. Did you see anything about that?
No, I'm just basing off the beakers and other things that they had. They said they forced through some type of microbiotic something. So I just jumped to the conclusion that they were using it for energy.
Yeah, that's the shit, man.
All right, so it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I
Yes,
definitely think
it is.
that that's an ingenious way to move tokens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it gives a whole new spin on the whole entire idea of shitcoins.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. But it's ingenious because they're getting paid to do this. That's something that everybody does, and the money you get paid to eat. So imagine homeless people.
Yeah, I don't know
You
about
know.
Chicago, but I know in Boston we have these new public toilets. It's like this round cage where and it's like a space, not like a spaceship, but it's like a capsule. And if you want to use it, you can go in there and handle your business. And there's a timer on the inside that it gives you like maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And if you're in there for longer than 10 minutes, then what happens is there's a speaker that a PA speaker that basically asks, "Do you need any help?" or something like that. But what I'm saying is these new systems, these new public toilets, can actually benefit from that whole tokenization, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a porta potty, basically. It's like a big porta potty, but it's massive though. It's like it looks like a space capsule. But you step in
Okay.
there and you know, it has a urinal and it has a place for defecation. But and the reason why it broadcasts after like 5 or 10 minutes is because they don't want people in there shooting up drugs and stuff and like that. You know what I'm saying? Or pass out for that matter, right?
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's really ingenious. I just got to figure out what it is that they're doing with the waste, because if you could turn waste into energy, what kind of, you know, power plant are you trying to run off of the waste? That's something I would like to know, because I know they've been able to turn urine into fuel.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in Africa there was a African man last year who was able to turn um,
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah, urine into um,
Like
to water
fertilizer
crops.
or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, to water the crops, irrigation. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on, BK from the Rockies? Wilsonian Garvey, Hades here. Complex, what's going on? Dollar Will, what's going on? Yeah, I think that's that's something to think about, because if they're able to pay people just through a QR code, you know how simple that is?
Yeah.
That's definitely dope, man. That's
Yeah.
definitely dope.
And it can alleviate some poverty in places.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
a- alleviate poverty and give people food to eat. Wow,
Mhm.
that it's so simple, but do so much at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get to the next video. All right, this next one is from CGTN again. China opens first fully automated hot pot restaurant. The first ever automated hot pot restaurant armed with robot chefs and waiters has opened in Chinese capital Beijing. A famous Chinese hot pot chain has teamed up with Japanese technology giant Panasonic for the restaurant, where robots take orders and prepare, prepare and deliver dishes. What do you think about this, Lionel?
I remember when we first started, they had that restaurant in Boston with the robots cooking food.
Hmm.
It similar to me. This sounds similar to it. Obviously, this robot is is only for to deliver food, right?
Hmm.
And it was saying the only time is when the robots are busy delivering food. Um, that statement in itself, the only time when the robots are busy delivering food, which means you don't need a human is needed, which means you don't need too many humans there.
Hmm.
That's telling to me. Um, other than that, they around the world, people are tampering with robotics to see what what can be done. This is just another notch under the belt.
Yeah, absolutely. Because now you don't have to tip the robot, right?
Ooh, what's a good one?
Because most waiters, waitresses make their money off of tips or
Right,
gratuity, right?
right.
Gratuity is the actual term.
Hmm.
Plus, you don't have to pay them,
This is
health insurance because sometimes a waiter or waitress may hurt themselves carrying too many items or something to that effect because of their arms and stuff like that. There's a whole lot of this is the uh, early phases of phasing out these low wage jobs.
yeah.
Right, this is it.
But we've always said the low wage, excuse me, the low wage jobs, the low hanging fruit are the first to get phased out because they're so repetitive. They don't need complex thought, you know,
Hmm.
and we're seeing it.
You know what's hilarious? I was just watching the video just now, and the robots actually blink their eyes. It's very interesting.
Mm.
The
Now,
LEDs
when
that
I
are
was
on
at the
it.
Microsoft, when I was at the Microsoft store, they had a robot there.
Really?
Um, yeah, at the Microsoft store. I should have took a picture. Um, you walk in, it's there at near the front door, and like, how may I help you? Things like that. Obviously, the workers there came before you get there, but it was pretty cool how he had the fingers and all. It was pretty cool, and the guy I was talking to was saying that SoftBank invested into it. So again, SoftBank is everywhere. So yeah.
Yeah, SoftBank went from building technology to actually just being a venture capitalist. So
Hmm.
it's basically their role for right now. All right, this next one is from GeekWire.com. This is a little bit of IT talk. AWS for everyone. New clues emerge about Amazon's secretive low-code, no-code project. The promise of so-called quote low-code, no-code software development tools is to enable anyone to create business applications around the custom needs. It sounds like Amazon Web Services is getting ready to extend that idea to everyone. Based on several LinkedIn resumes and recent tech talk, it now seems like more than 50 engineers are working on a secretive low-code, no-code project that's part of an effort called AWS for Everyone. Early reports Earlier reports indicated that AWS have some has for some time have been working on a cloud service that would allow people with little to no software development experience to create simple business applications without having to call up an IT department. But it wasn't clear what that entailed. AWS engineers looking for Seattle area jobs at other low code, no code companies have pitched themselves as having relevant experience via a project called AWS for Everyone, according to a source. That project is also referenced in the LinkedIn profiles of multiple AWS employees for now. Patrick Wu, an AWS engineer, gave a talk at the Cascadia JS JavaScript conference in November, describing some engineering challenges his team of more than 50 engineers faced while creating a quote single page applications at scale, codenamed Beehive. A YouTube caption for the video of the talk embedded below called that project AWS for Everyone and described it as a quote new product that will transform many industries and change how people work. And according to his LinkedIn profile, Wu is working for Adam Bosworth, the former Salesforce engineer who joined AWS in 2016 and has been linked to the low code, no code project by a report in the information last year. Bosworth's project also tied to the no compete battle AWS launched against former executive Gene Farrell, who joined Smartsheet which is working on low code, no code services in 2017, a senior vice president of product. So now they're trying to turn IT into fast food restaurants where it's like Burger King, you have it your way, you kind of order it up, and you don't really need any real skills to actually make the food or order the food and know what you're actually looking for.
Mm.
So this is getting
Okay,
to the
so
this is getting to the point where they're trying to
go ahead.
this is getting to a point where they're phasing out the low end of IT.
Okay. Um. So, what is the low? What are the low jobs of IT that that you say they're trying to phase out?
Those are the entry level programming jobs. So you won't need any interns or anything like that anymore. You don't need entry level guys who might be looking to get their feet wet. You can't just get your feet wet. You got to come in there fully soaked.
Mm.
So that's why
Now,
when we have these hangouts, I kind of advise people not to look ahead and don't try to just get your network plus or just get your little certification here and there. That's not going to cut it anymore going forward. You got to bring a lot to the table. And this article just proves that point, that it's getting to the point where they don't need programmers anymore. Somebody who doesn't know anything about programming could order up something like off of a menu at a restaurant and get what they want.
these out programmers all together.
No, people who can just do one or two things. If you're a one trick pony, your job is in jeopardy. So if all you know how to do is write HTML, that's not enough anymore. Nobody really cares about that anymore.
So you got to write HTML and do what else?
You got to know Java, you got to know Python, got to know C++.
Oh, so you got to. So now people have to be multilingual in computer code.
Not just multilingual, you got to know DevOps. DevOps is a big thing now. Got to be able to understand cybersecurity. Got to be able to understand uh, the business intelligence aspect, right? So, or even just the business analytics aspect. Thinking about you got to understand global markets now, because what's happening in America could be completely different than what's happening in Latin America and what their needs are and what their culture is. So when you design applications and you design services, a service-oriented architecture, it has to cater to that environment. You have to understand that environment. So not just being able to write code in a different language, but to actually speak in a different language now too. So if you know Spanish or you know Arabic, these are huge areas to actually have under your waistline.
Okay, so because all right, so because the field IT field is getting more and more competitive because of the what employers expect you to know. So you have to, along with the things you said, the DevOps, the cybersecurity, multilingual, you have to know another language.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a coworker that I'm very good friends with. He's from Syria. He knows Arabic, he knows English, he knows French, and he knows a little bit of I think he might know a little bit of Russian.
Now,
He's a millennial. He's a millennial.
man, goodness. Okay, crazy question. This computer code is the same, like Python. It's the same no matter what language you speak, in terms of French, Arabic, English.
Oh no, I only brought up linguistics because linguistics matter on a global market. So if you're going to be
Okay.
involved in a global market, you got to be able to speak other languages, and if you're going to be in that industry, you got to be able to write different languages as well, right? So different programming languages is what I'm referring to. But linguistics wise, this that matters as well too, because you need to be able to interact with other people and understand what it is that they're looking for. What AWS is doing is they're basically creating a Domino's pizza for everybody and saying, do you want pepperonis or do you want anchovies?
Wow. Because I know you brought this up before, maybe a month and a half ago,
Mm-hmm.
about is coding becoming obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is something.
This is it. This is what I was referring to: low code, no code. I mean, this is just based on simple applications. So if you want a website, you want et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that can be served to you through low code, no code. But at the high level, at the vertical, yeah, you're gonna need to know Python in depth, Java in depth, C++ in depth, C sharp in depth, Go, Ruby, all those things you're gonna need to know either in depth or have some kind of literacy of it. So that's why you need to be able to open up uh, um, 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 you're going to need to be able to go into a program or open up an application and be able to bug fix and then look at the code and be like, oh, okay, that has too many exclamation points, or that has a period, or it has a space in between there. So let me just correct that.
Okay. Hmm. Okay. All right. At the simple level, the no code is it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
okay. All right. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Preem, they're gonna I just want to answer Preem's question real quick. They are going to automate coders and programmers roles as well. To a certain extent, some of that stuff is already being done with artificial intelligence. All right, this one is from CryptoBriefing.com. X phone review promising start, but it's not the next iPhone. Pundi's Pundi's X's new X phone attracted a lot of buzz at CES 2019 in Las Vegas this week. The idea of a smartphone that can run on a blockchain technology sounds like a dream to hardcore crypto fans. But if you're thinking they are creating a mesh cell network, we'll explain you are dreaming. I've seen a mesh. I've seen mesh cell. Lionel, can you please mute yourself? I've seen the mesh cell networks conceptualized and pitched at a variety of tech and wireless conferences over the years. Think of a two-way radio in which the connection between devices doesn't require a pass-through connection with a third-party cell tower or any other internet connection for that matter. Tor and other P2P technologies have been long implemented in mobile phones by innovative tech startups to bypass mobile carriers like Tor and Torrents. The idea is that the network speeds up and increases efficiency where more nodes are added. The more users on a distributed mesh network, the more it speeds up. Think of it as reverse Ethereum, but that's not what this phone is. The Pundy's XX phone does act as a node for Pundy X blockchain, but you'll still need a SIM card from a wireless carrier that supports unlocked phones. It's creating an Ethereum-like platform where developers can distribute dApps to consumers. Hardly a revolutionary statement. I want to be clear. I want to be clear up front that there's a lot I like with Pundy's X. Their upcoming mainnet release will be stellar, but you shouldn't judge the company on the success of their X phone. It's more of a proof of concept than a decentralized iPhone. The X phone uses an operating system known as Function X. Switching from traditional mode to blockchain mode is done by swiping left and right on the home screen. You'll see what mode you're in underneath the time at the top of the screen. From there, you can use the blockchain to make voice calls and to other X phone users. I'm not really familiar with this phone in particular, but does I have heard about cell phone mesh networking. I know. Do you know anything about this? Hey, what's going on,
No, I don't
Complex?
know.
Hey, what's going on,
What's
everyone?
going
Good
on,
evening.
complex?
Good, good.
I don't know what the mesh network, but per the article, um, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that each phone that's in their network, to me, it sounds like a lightning network sort of deal where when you call somebody, you will have that. Uh, you call that person's phone. You don't have to go through a cellular tower. And like the article said, more phones on the network means the stronger the connection, the stronger the network. I'm going to go out on them and say that, but wholly, I don't know what mesh network is. It sounds interesting.
Mhm.
Um, he made the corny joke of if you're a Colombian drug lord, you're like this because of privacy, blah blah blah. But it sounds interesting, so I will look that up.
So how this sounds? This sounds sort of like kind of like a satellite phone network, or like a VPN type of network, but just done on the blockchain. So given that it's done on the blockchain, there's that level of anonymity. It just basically records the data transactions, but doesn't necessarily um, identify who the persons were and what the nature of the calls were. That's kind of how I'm hearing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
something to that effect. But the main advantage is that if you have all of these phones inside of a mesh network, then they don't need a cell phone tower to communicate with each other. It's basically bringing back a Nextel feature, the two-way chirp, to modern day phones.
Right, right. Yeah, that's kind of how that sounds.
Chirp, chirp, where you at?
Where you at, dog?
I miss those phones.
Those things were highly annoying, man. They really were.
They
I
were.
used to just hear chirps all over the damn place, and people would just be chirp, and they talking out loud. And I was just like, dude, put some damn earphones in.
Mhm.
They were, but they were cool.
All right, next article is from VentureBeat.com. Blockchain can help enterprises improve multi-cloud network management. This is another IT article. Study last year reported that 81% of the enterprises now have a multi-cloud strategy, and the majority have hybrid or public hybrid of private and public clouds. That's a significant number of companies struggling to manage complex existing networks and multiple clouds, as well as the associated security strains. Blockchain technology may still be the new kid on the block, but it has a lot of promise in exactly this kind of environment. Let's take a look at two common challenges where blockchain has potential: making clouds talk to each other. No matter the reason that necessitates a multi-cloud or hybrid setup, the associated networking challenges are almost always the same. Instances in each cloud provider are typically in their own private network and can't see each other, let alone communicate, without significant routing or firewall configurations. Each instance essentially lives in a silo without any interconnection. If the instances do get bridged, it's an entirely different challenge. To make sure communication is secure and safe from attacks such as eavesdropping or man in the middle, today many businesses solve the issues. If they have sufficient resources, which is a challenge in and itself, with NATs and VPNs to each bridge, each network. Unfortunately, that means where there's one more service to configure and maintain, and yet another point of failure. VPNs were created more when more static data centers were in the norm, rather than elastic topologies that cloud hosting enables. This doesn't allow them to scale well. However, blockchain could help with eliminating any need for a separate, centrally managed VPN by instead using resilient peer-to-peer connections. Because of blockchain's decentralized nature and enthusiastic open source communities, blockchain systems are often accompanied by powerful auxiliary tools and technology, such as robust peer-to-peer networking and data replication implementations. These characteristics provide the opportunity to bridge cloud providers into a common network where each connection point securely pairs with every other point.
Dude, I was just literally just asking you about that. Like, is it going to be sort of like a mesh between like VPNs and blockchains? And yeah, this is explaining exactly kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, that blockchain kind of eliminates the whole entire idea of a VPN, anyways. So basically, what they're saying is that uh, the ability for different clouds to talk to each other actually is actually a need. We talked about this on Saturday, that you have Microsoft Azure and you have AWS, and then you have Red Hat's cloud, and then you have Oracle, or you have DigitalOcean, or Rackspace,
Mm-hmm.
is another cloud provider. So you have all these different clouds, but they can't talk to each other unless you have some really complex network configurations, and that's a problem. But if you just set up a blockchain as a
Mm-hmm.
service, you can just point one to the other, and they can latch on to the edge layer of each network, and that allows a secure connection because it's immutable, as well as it can be privatized through the latest versions of blockchain. So
Now, do you think services like Azure and AWS, do you think they would do something to where they would try to curb that ability
not necessarily, because they don't care. They get paid based on the resources in the service that they
in the
provide.
service? Okay, got you. Doesn't really matter if data is being transferred like through one cloud to another through a service through a block. It doesn't really matter.
No, they've already accepted that they have competition, and different competition offers different services. You know, if you're a Microsoft shop, you know, you have Active Directory, you have Exchange, you have all of these traditional Microsoft services that you had before. So it's likely that you're going to lock in with Microsoft, but there's also AWS that has other services such as low code, no code, database as a service, and so on and so forth. You
Hmm.
you may fractionize your needs in different places, and still can have a multipolar relationship.
Okay. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Hmm. I know you had something.
I had a question about the whole article, but as you all spoke, I had my answers question. Had my questions answered.
Hmm. I'm surprised we didn't cover that on Saturday. That's fine. All right, next one is from CoinDesk.com. IBM, Aetna, PNC explore medical data blockchain for 100 million health plans. IBM is collaborating with a group of major players in the healthcare space to improve the way sensitive data is shared and make health claims and transactions more efficient, all in the form of blockchain-based ecosystem. Announced today, Big Blue is joined in this effort by Aetna, acquired last November by pharmacy and health plan provider CVS health plan provider Anthem, healthcare service healthcare service corporation, and PNC Bank. These providers combined account for close to 100 million healthcare plans. I,
Wow.
yeah, IBM said additional members will join the health utility network in the coming months, including other health organizations, health providers, startups, technology companies. Barbara Hayes, IBM General Manager for payers at IBM Watson Health, told CoinDesk, quote, IBM is one of the founding members, but everybody has an equal stake across those founding members. It is so important because you do have competitors side by side who are going after tremendous amounts of waste that is in the healthcare system, 40 cents, 50 cents on the dollar. I think I talked about, the cloud aspect to that you do have competing vendors, for different services and whatnot. Hayes said transforming industries such as healthcare means going after insights and advanced predictions using data and eliminating waste or inefficiencies. Well, in healthcare, these inefficiencies are in clinical areas and in administrative areas, or just friction that happens in the ecosystem, which leads to bad customer experience. Dr. Bill LaFontaine, IBM General Manager of Intellectual Property, added, quote, we are going to provide the SDKs being software developer kits, and other ways to link to platforms. We are leaving this very open because many of the members are bridging different technology that they have already been investing in, and so they get a faster return on investment. However, IBM is far from the only tech firm trying to leverage the mutability and transparency of blockchain for the siloed and fragmented healthcare industry. Other prominent names in the blockchain healthcare include Change Healthcare, Hash Healthcare, Guardtime, Gem, and Simply Vital, to name a few.
MedChain is another one to check out also.
Is that an American or is that an African one?
It's an American one.
Okay. Yeah, but I think that they're talking about these companies that are working on the project. Not if MedChain's not mentioned, then it's probably not there.
Oh, when they were talking about competitors, they said to name a few. I was saying MedChain is another one because I've been following MedChain probably since 2017. I think last year they raised I think it's like $20 or $30 million in funding. So they're another one to look into if you guys are interested.
Yeah, it seemed like they're pushing for this Medicare blockchain for people around the world.
Does this replace HIPAA?
No, it doesn't replace HIPAA. It has to work in compliance with HIPAA in America. And
okay.
Europe has GDPR.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's a little different because now you can privatize certain blockchains and you can masquerade personal identifiable information from the actual blockchain. So, but in this regard, they're talking about sorry, give me 1 second.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Oh, they're talking about healthcare plans. So they're not talking about actual healthcare records. So if you could put the plan on the blockchain, then that makes it easier to transfer from one institution to the other.
Ah, okay. I follow.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, well, so HIPAA would remain intact.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, HIPAA's basic guideline says that the information must be protected at all costs. So that means that there has to be some form of ownership. But the thing about blockchain that is decentralized, it makes it difficult to actually put ownership on a decentralized item.
Right.
So that's where that's why there's so much effort being put into this to try to manage this, because HIPAA is so strict in its policy that you can't just throw things on the blockchain because it's the blockchain. That's not just how it works.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be all types of end-to-end security and compliance aspect that's in place, because yeah, you put it on the blockchain, but okay, so how do you get it off? Because somebody has to be on the receiving end, and somebody had to send it. So who signed off on it, and who's receiving it?
Right.
And if you lose those, and the blockchain, you know, as quiet as kept, it can actually be breached.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. We won't go into the hows right now, but that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can actually brute force a attack on a blockchain. All right, this one is from CryptoBriefing.com. MasterCard is grabbing all the blockchain IP it can handle. MasterCard filed the most global blockchain patents out of all U.S. firms in 2017. A new report has found. The news comes in the same week as the EU regulators fined the card provider $650 million for restricting competition. A survey conducted by UHI Hacker Young, a UK-based group of accountants and business providers, found that MasterCard filed more blockchain patents with the World Intellectual Property Organization than any other company based in the U.S. or the USA. At a national level, the U.S. was second only to China in the number of patents filed to WIPO. The organization received a total of 305 patents to do with blockchain in 2017. More than half of these were submitted by companies in the G7 nations. In total, U.S. firms filed around 92 global patents. 30% of the total for the year. For that year, Chinese firms filed 99. UHY Hacker Young had a few details to share about MasterCard's blockchain plans, except to note that one of the new patents is for offline blockchain exchanges. The website Blockchain Library, which was last updated in November 2017, lists 11 blockchain patents submitted by MasterCard to WIPO in 2017. This includes the offline blockchain exchange mentioned by UHY Hacker Young, but also ways to validate blockchain transactions and a new method for digital signatures. Crypto Briefing approached MasterCard for information on the number and nature of their blockchain patents, but did not receive a reply by press time. The press team by UHY Hacker Young also wouldn't say whether MasterCard has supplied additional information in regards to their blockchain patents. Something about that name, UHY Hacker Young. I don't know if I really trust them, you know, to do business. I just don't see the value. That name is really rubbing me the wrong way.
You know, we've been speculating for quite some time here, and you know, we can maybe call this another brain trust first, but we've been speculating for quite some time here that MasterCard is positioning itself, right, to leverage every last bit of this new technology and be the global leader in terms of, large-scale fintech. And the fact that they have filed the most blockchain-based patents of any company in the U.S., I don't know. I think that's I don't know. I think that's like just more of an indicator that we may actually be on the ball with our assessment there.
Typically, when you file patents, it's not that so much you're going to use it, but the ability that nobody else can actually use it. So you want to license out that technology as well. That's commonly what happens with companies like MasterCard and Visa, because they don't actually own any sort of banks or anything like that. The banks just utilize the MasterCard or Visa network. So the more patents you can put in place, the easier it is for you to set the standards as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, it seems like MasterCard is not still in their hands. They're, like you all said, they're setting themselves up for a future which they see the possibilities of blockchain, and that is going to be an acceptable technology that people are going to use, especially like you said in fintech. So what they're doing, like you said, they're filing all these patents to make sure, hey, they're not left behind and somewhere future-proofing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a lesson to be learned, you know, from any Black people listening to this. If you're gonna, you know, you're gonna get into technology or any other industry, you should be, you know, writing your patents down either in your head or or on paper. I have a friend who walks around with a Sony Dicta, um, which is a digital recording machine. He keeps that in his pocket, and anytime he comes up with an idea, he just pulls it out, speaks to it, and then puts it right back in his pocket.
Hmm.
I don't know how many patents he owns, but he must own a lot of things because keeps that with him. He's had that for the last 10 years. So.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, using services like LegalZoom, for example, to get a patent filed, I think it's just maybe like a few $100, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a few $100 to protect $1 million idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you may not be able to get to LegalZoom while you're on the train or you're on the bus or you're in the bathroom somewhere because, you know, you just don't have access to a computer. But being able to record that to your dicta and then,
Mm-hmm.
you know, at the end of the day, just kind of plug that into your PC and download it and be like, okay, this is all I have.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this one is from Electrek.com. Tesla applies for a series of patents for new AI chip and autopilot hardware 3.0. Tesla is working on an important new product that it claims will enable them to bring self-driving capability to its vehicles. A new AI chip or neural net accelerator to be released in the autopilot hardware 3.0 computer upgrade. We have now uncovered a series of patent applications from Tesla about this new computer. As previously mentioned, Tesla hired a team of chip architects and executives from AMD back in 2016, and they are now led by former Apple chip architect Peter Bannon to deliver the new computer to power Tesla's self-driving team. Bannon, along with several of those former AMD engineers like Emil Tapas, a former longtime AMD chip architect who worked on the K12 ARM core, and missing this person's name, Das Sommer, former lead CPU architect at AMD, are all named on a series of patent applications related to the new computer. In one of the patent applications made public today, Tesla explains why they wanted to move away from CPUs and GPUs to power their machine learning system. This is a very long explanation, but this is just the topology of one of the schematics for the patent application.
Now they did just get their announced layoffs of what, like 5,000 employees or something like that.
Who's that?
Tesla.
Yeah, that's kind of typical that they
Yeah.
Because what happens with a lot of times they may lay these people off, but they may bring a lot of them back as contractors.
Yeah. Yep.
But what I want to point out, something that was important, was that they hired Apple chip architect Peter Bannon. Now we talked about this last week that Apple laid off their autonomous car division, or they redistributed these people.
Interesting. So what do you see in this? And we're just kind of presupposing.
Apple had something on the table, and maybe they were in collaboration with Tesla. Maybe from my understanding, there was somebody who took some information to Tesla or tried to breach Tesla or something to that effect. There was some kind of bilateral agreements between Apple and Tesla at some point.
Yeah.
It looks like Apple is tapping out. We talked about this last week that Apple can't afford to price their phones at a certain range, so they have to invent something new. And as it stands right now, there are no visionaries inside Apple, and Tesla already has dozens of patents in place for electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles, and we're talking right now about their Autopilot 3.0 platform that they're working on. So maybe Apple was working on an autonomous driver stack similar to Waymo. I mean, I don't foresee them making a vehicle, but maybe they were going to partner with someone they were going to create the driver stack, and somebody else was going to create the vehicle, and they were going to be able to pop their stack on that vehicle, or make it multi-platform compatible with different brands.
Yeah, that's what my thought was. It was going to kind of be like the option B scenario. Given that Steve is gone, if Apple was going to do a car, it would have been under the vision of Steve Jobs. Okay, that didn't happen. Apple does need to innovate. We've been talking shit about them actually for the last couple of weeks, basically saying that they don't innovate anything. Last thing they came out with was a watch. So, I mean, we also kind of theorized and kind of maybe put out into the ethers that a good acquisition for Apple would be Tesla.
Yeah. A partnership, something.
Yeah.
Well, they probably didn't want to take on all the debt from Tesla too, because that's usually what would happen with somebody like Tesla. They would have had to encompass all that debt before they even seen a profit, and it probably would have been 5 or 10 years before you would have seen the vehicle. That would have took a long time.
Yeah, it's not as if like Apple doesn't have the cash though.
Well, cash is one thing, but Microsoft had a lot of cash too, and they still can't put out a good phone. So
yeah.
That's not always an indicator of good.
Yeah.
What's good for the company. I think there was a lot of money sank into their autonomous driving platform for Apple, and they probably saw that this isn't going to be feasible going forward. How much money is it going to it's going to cost? Probably going to cost you a few $1 billion, obviously. It's any car company is going to cost at least $500 million going in. That's what you're looking at for EV. Now, was Apple just going to develop their driver stack, or were they going to build a whole entire vehicle? If they were going to build a whole entire vehicle, they were screwed. There was no way you're going to compete with Tesla and put out a competitive product. Because Tesla is 10 plus years in, and they're having a hard time cracking the market too.
Well, I mean, I think that's what's interesting about this whole the onset of this whole the EV sector of the automotive industry, right? Because look, the major automotive manufacturers, I would say the only manufacturer that really right now that can kind of come right out the gate with a really good shot is Porsche. We covered Porsche's new platform that they're going to be putting out here a couple weeks ago. Now, with everyone else, they have the struggle of trying to match the appeal of Tesla. Tesla has the struggle of breaking into the market and getting a sector of it to such an extent that they actually start to show that you can foresee where they'll show a profit. It's really still hard to say like when they're going to be profitable right about now.
Well, they'll probably only be profitable once they start licensing out the technology rather than making vehicles.
Right.
You have to pay people to work on the assembly line. You have to pay for the manufacturing process. All that stuff costs a lot of money. That's probably driving them into debt.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that either Tesla and Apple would partner with a car manufacturer that is so behind other car manufacturers in developing this autonomous vehicle that they need to partner with somebody. They can't do it themselves. And they would have the infrastructure to build the car. And Tesla or Apple Tesla will have the technology to do it, to have them mass produce vehicles. That's what I would imagine.
Well, I see some synergy here, because Tesla does have, they have an all enclosed gigafactory based manufacturing process, right? That they're ultimately trying to roll out here. So if you can offload a portion of the development to someone like an Apple, right? I can see if you strategically break the R&D up,
Mhm.
right? Uh, Apple takes its portion, and its portion essentially would cover everything under its domain, and Tesla strictly focuses on its core, which would be batteries, and batteries and components, and the manufacturing of it in one enclosure, right? And if you can get some very good synergistic R&D between the two, I can see a very strong partnership. I mean, this could you could do. I honestly see this in the sense that, if it's done right, Tim Cook could actually. I don't know. I think you might have to replace him before, in order for Apple to
Yeah,
get it right.
yeah,
No, he's gone by 2020.
Yeah,
yeah.
He's
yeah.
gone
You're
mark.
gonna have to
You
replace
can
him to
mark
do
it
this.
here. You can mark
He
it
has
here.
to
He's
go.
gone by 2020. But
He has to go.
he's not the down he's not the fault as to why they're not inventing anything, but he's responsible, right? Because he inherited Apple. He didn't actually, he's not Wozniak. He's not anybody else that from the old manosphere of Apple.
Hmm.
Um, but Apple's scrambling because they know that Samsung is working on an electric vehicle, autonomous vehicle, a Galaxy vehicle. So they've been working on that for quite some time. So we'll see
Wow.
what happens. An Android-based autonomous vehicle. So
Yeah, that would be interesting.
So if it's the Android-based autonomous vehicle, which means there'll be more impetus on controlling things from your phone. Your phone would be basically would replace a lot of laptops and desktops. Everything
wait,
will be controlled from your phone.
what do you mean?
If it's an Android-based car, Android is pretty much your cell phone, right?
Well, I'm saying Android in the sense that it's not Apple, not
Okay.
Android that it's going to run Android. The car will probably run some form of Samsung proprietary operating system like Tizen or something like that. I do know that Samsung is a big investor into Tizen, Tizen, Tizen. For those of you listening, that's a open source operating system project, and they're part of the Linux Foundation as well. So Linux Foundation also has an autonomous driver stack open source that you can download. That's been crafted, over the last couple of quarters.
Okay.
Mhm. All right, let me jump to the next article. All right, this one is from electric.com. Tesla implements innovative way to avoid gas car icing superchargers. Following several issues at supercharger stations where gas-powered vehicles were blocking access, Tesla is now implementing an innovative way to avoid icing superchargers and make sure the spots are always ready for Tesla owners. It's not exactly uncommon for vehicles to block access to charging stations. It's referred to in the EV community as icing. A charging station when ICE, internal combustion engine, vehicles are occupying a space for EV. Most of, most often than not, it's a mistake from the driver or someone who simply doesn't care. But we have recently reported in instances where pickup trucks drivers appear to be doing it on purpose aggressively in protest of Tesla.
And in one particular instance, we did see Preem's truck in a picture.
Yeah, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
America. China. In China, Tesla has now started using an interesting system to make sure it doesn't happen. They are deploying these blocks in the parking lots with spots with QR codes linked to an app for Tesla owners to unlock them in order to park. Tesla is installing those installing those devices at supercharger stations in China, it doesn't seem to have made its way internationally yet. That's an interesting system for, though it appears to only work through the WeChat app. It would be nice for Tesla to make them work for the Tesla app, or even directly from a transmitter within the vehicle. I wouldn't mind seeing the system being implemented globally where it's feasible. I don't think it would work everywhere because the parking spots at most supercharger stations are still owned by property owners, and Tesla would probably need to have the system approved by them. Also, the issue that Tesla has been having with anti-Tesla pickup truck drivers taking over supercharger stations in the U.S. recently would probably require bigger system, because those raised pickup trucks could probably just park over one of those locked devices. This is just a picture of the device. Me personally, I think it's a good idea, but I also think that it's ineffective against lifted trucks, right? So what would have to happen is um, you would need spike strips at the front of those parking spots, and
Yeah.
a QR code comes, not a QR code, but a RFID connected to the vehicle and connected to the parking spot actually lowers the spikes into the ground and allows you to drive over.
Yep. Or it could be like a pneumatic spike strip, right? So like you hit the air pressure and they just they pop up and then they'll just lay down, right? So you don't even have to put them in the ground. They can just be above ground, and what they do is they're in the up position, and you just use the QR code tech or what have you, and then they'll release the pneumatic pressure and they'll go down, and then you just park. Or did we just throw another business idea out there?
Well, it belongs to Tesla as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, well, oh yeah. That's
I know
just
you had anything you want to add?
Spike it up, man. Spike it up because, hey, I mean, why? I mean, uh, it's how childish people can be of just parking in these spots. No one, you know what? I hope they all get tickets. That's
Well, you can't give them a ticket, and that's the issue,
really why not?
because there are lots of private.
the only thing that could happen is that the lot itself could get the vehicle towed.
Yeah, and
That's
probably
right.
press a trespassing charge.
Trespassing, yeah.
Spike it, spike it.
Spike it.
That's it.
Well, you could do it just like a what do you call that? The violet dye that goes inside, or the fluorescent dye, or whatever you want to call it, inside the money bags of at a bank.
Nice.
You imagine if like you parked your vehicle into a spot and there's a bladder on top of the spot that hangs over, and if you're not a Tesla owner or something like that, it just splashes all over your vehicle and destroys it.
Yeah. And as you ride around, people know, oh, that person tried to,
That person's an asshole. That guy right there.
yeah. Mm.
So we've got spikes and we've got a fluorescent dye bladder. There you go, Tesla. Run with
Yeah.
it.
All right, this next one is from VentureBeat.com. Next Trucking raises $97 million to streamline freight transport. Next Trucking, a logistics platform that matches carriers with shippers, has raised $97 million in Series C round of funding led by Brookfield, with participation from Sequoia Capital and GLP among others. Founded in 2015, Next is essentially an online marketplace that helps connect shippers, companies, and distributors who dispatch cargo en masse with truckers and truck companies. Drivers upload their individual preferences in the Next app, including their rates, routes, and available hours, and Next matches them with an appropriate route. The Los Angeles-based startup counts 15,000 drivers on its platform and 60 in-house employees. Next had previously raised around $27 million, most of which arrived via its Series B round last January. And with another $97 million in the bank, it plans to accelerate product innovation, which includes bringing a new product called Relay to market.
And they only have 60 employees.
Mm-hmm. Relay is described as a product to ease congestion at shipping ports, such as those found in and around Los Angeles and Long Beach. While moving goods between cities may come from within its own traffic congestion problems, drayage, I think that's how you pronounce it, drayage, the transportation of goods over shorter distances, including between a port and the shipper's warehouse, can compound matters. With Relay, Next wants to combine its. Are you kidding me? With Relay, Next wants to combine its freight marketplace with company-owned yards, quote, to increase truck turns and container moves, and expedite deliveries to warehouses. Quote, the logistics space is under more pressure than ever before. The more shipments coming into our ports than drivers and warehouses have the capacity to manage. So what it sounds like to me, man, is they've been able to capture sort of an Airbnb Lyft style.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like the Uberization of trucking.
Yeah, just it's
gig trucking.
Well, they're actually not so much as gig trucking, but actually they've taken a lot of the data science. They've basically leveraged data science for their own shipping purposes. But I think that's what's your take on this complex?
Like I said, I kind of look at it as kind of like the Uberization of trucking. I mean, I'm kind of taking a sort of like a metaphorical, take on what you're talking about. It's sort of like they kind of just sort of leveraged, new technologies to basically execute an old task. Okay. And with the new technologies, it allows for different things to occur to get the same result. So when I say Uberization, that's literally just, a new form of the taxi industry. It just went from what you knew as the taxi industry into this new form where you can just instantly hail it and it's pretty much anybody who's going to pick you up, right? This is kind of much the same way.
I know.
Yeah, we went over something like this, I want to say 2 weeks ago, about a company, it's the same company, the Uberization of pickup trucks. And it sounds exactly the same thing. And I agree with Complex on this one.
Yeah, that company is speculated to have a valuation of $800 million. And potentially even more by next year. I think like $1 billion by next year. So
I can even see somebody like Uber buying them.
That would make it a unicorn, right?
Say that again?
I said that would make it a unicorn.
Yeah.
I don't know, because Uber does have a trucking platform coming out, but I'm not sure if they where it is. I think it was in the alpha phases when I last heard it. That was about last summer. So it's not uncommon that a company like Uber or a company like Lyft would actually would actually get into something like this. Now, Penske would probably be more invested into this, right?
Definitely.
U-Haul, Budget, those type of companies would want something like this because they don't have that sort of platform because they're a traditional legacy sort of service, whereas Uber and Lyft are already next gen services. So they've already probably factored that into their portfolio.
And those companies also, like you said, like the Penske, Budget. So yeah, if they did use something like this, they could even pair that with all of their commercial truck rental services, right?
Exactly.
Yep. I follow. Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right, this one is from Gizmodo.com. Uber might be thinking about self-driving scooters and bikes now. Uber, the company that had to pull its self-driving cars off the road for most of 2018 following a lethal accident that allegedly came after warnings of routine accidents, is hiring for a program that may work on self-driving micro-mobility devices, TechCrunch reported on Sunday. Details are, as TechCrunch noted, scarce, but there's a lot of speculation that Uber is investigating autonomous versions of the scooters and bikes of the short-term rental type that have already taken over many major cities. The Telegraph reported that Uber has begun hiring for the micromobility robotics team, which it wrote had the goal of developing scooters and bikes that can drive to charging stations themselves, or possibly to go and pick up riders after the prior passenger disembarks. TechCrunch noted that a Google form uploaded by Uber's Advanced Technologies Group was soliciting applicants. The new mobility team at Uber is exploring ways to improve safety, rider experience, and operational efficiency of our shared electric scooters and bicycles through the application of sensing and robotics technologies. Self-driving scooters would be a big game changer for Uber. It already has a fleet of electric bikes and scooters under its Jump division, but like competitors Bird and Lime, the latter of which Uber owns a minority stake in. The logistics of using a small army of contractors to pick up scooters after rides are already a major money burner. Complex retired of paying you. Moreover, the
I
companies
knew it was coming, dude. I was waiting for it, dude.
Moreover, the companies haven't been great about managing them. Both Bird and Lime were restricted from doing business in San Francisco after launching without permits and leaving scooters everywhere, and locals in West Coast cities reportedly waged a sort of guerrilla vandalism campaign against them in 2018. As TechCrunch noted, Uber Jump recently unveiled a series of upgrades to give some of its bikes self-diagnostic capabilities and swappable batteries, designed to minimize downtime. Self-driving scooters are an obvious way to further streamline the business. On the other hand, given that Uber and its competitors have already run into major safety issues with self-driving cars, it's hard not to be somewhat worried about an army of self-driving scooters hitting the roads and sidewalks of U.S. cities, intermixing with pedestrians and vehicular traffic. Reports have suggested human-piloted ones available right now have generated a growing number of injuries, and there have been serious glitches with some models. This is
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, this is really something. Bikes, I think that would be a bit of a stretch, but scooters, I can definitely see that happening. But the problem is, you freak a lot of people out with a scooter, just going down a bike lane with nobody attached to it.
Yeah. I mean, okay. How do I see this? Okay, because I see the possibility, right? Especially if it's some sort of what are those things called? that they have like in India. What's it called? What they drive around? It's like a little three-wheeled.
Oh, you mean a
What's that? What are they called?
in America we call those Cushmans. We call them Cushmans in America, but in India they call them something different.
Yeah, yeah. So I can okay if it's something like that, right? That follows basically a GPS path along the bike path or something.
Hmm.
You know, and you just see these things kind of roaming, and it just stops, and then you hop in and you scan, and then it goes.
Hmm.
I mean, and it just basically takes a path, right? Um, I can see that. Honestly, I can kind of see it, man. Being a somebody who does work for Bird, uh, you know, and working in a major market, now working in a smaller market in a town like just about an hour and a half north of LA. You know, I can kind of I've seen the topography of all of this, and bikes. I agree with you. I just don't really see how bikes like do the self-driving. I think that's more or less for proof of concept. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Duplicat actually says in the chat it's called a tuk tuk.
that's the term that's the term right there.
Yeah.
So something like that, totally, I can totally see it. Now, just like the scooters that they currently deploy, the ones that I'm always rebuilding, I have a backyard full of right now. Nothing like that. No, these things are already dangerous as is. People already don't possess the requisite coordination to really kind of operate these things at the speeds that they build them at. We have to GPS control, we have to geofence these things and GPS control the speeds, because people just, if we were just to let them go at like 20, 22 miles an hour, like a lot of these things can do, man, people kill themselves. So that's why the the data that's been gleaned from the reduction in accidents just simply by geofencing the speed on these things, so that they saw like a huge reduction in accidents, right? We're talking scooters. So if we were to take that thinking a step further, right? So we put it in like a Tut-Tut or Cushman type of vehicle, right? And it has like maybe like a mid-drive electric system on it, and actuator controlled steering arm, and it has like a little actuator box, and it's all IoT. It's all IoT controlled. Similar to how the scooters are plugged in.
Hmm.
I can totally see it.
Hmm. I know you have anything you want to?
Okay. Wow. This technology is going fast, ain't it?
Yeah.
I agree. It's a more proof of concept on. I'll say that only because I can't see myself on one. Like it's like be awkward. No, yeah. I think it's more of a proof of concept
Hmm.
until you see it in action. If you see it in action, we may have a different thought.
No, but China. I'm not sure which company it is in China, and I believe there's one in Japan and South Korea. I think we've all seen. I think there's about three different attempts at creating self-driving bicycles. So self-balancing bicycles. Sorry. So the bikes can, they just stay up no matter what. Now, Yamaha, if I remember correctly, has a patent in place for self-driving motorcycles or self-balancing motorcycles. Sorry.
Now we've seen that at CES, with the self-balancing motorcycle that I've seen.
Right. Right. So if you're talking about motorcycles being self-balancing, and then you have Ducati who works with Dianese for airbags in your motorcycle jacket in your helmet, and I think Volvo also has a patent in place for helmet technology that allows other vehicles to know whether or not you're going to make a turn or not. No, other autonomous vehicles to know that you make a turn or not. There's something going on in terms of development, micromobility development, transportation development, and autonomy that is pointing towards this direction. That there is a possibility that these bikes could be, self balancing and self driving.
Yeah, no, that's basically where all this stuff is going. Mike, you remember there was a hangout we did some weeks ago, and we were looking at different types of uh, mobility solutions that are coming out to the market. All these different sleek designs, right? That use a lot of like different geometries. There was that one scooter that basically it's not necessarily self-balancing, but basically you can just get off of it and just leave it there, and it stands on its own. Um, there's different there's the single wheeled scooter that you just stand on, and it's one wheel, and it's kind of like it's gyroscopic. Sorry, that's my door here. So there's all these different types of there's all these different types of scooters there. Give me 1 second, guys.
Hmm. Yeah, and I just want to reread this, this part of the paragraph that I thought was interesting. Um, the logistics of using a small army of contractors to pick up scooters after rides are already a major money burner. Now, I know. What do you think about that quote?
Oh, my bad. I thought my mic was off. Repeat that one more time. What was the quote?
Oh, the quote from the article was that, but like competitors, Bird and Lime, the latter of which Uber owns a minority stake in, the logistics of using a small army of contractors to pick up scooters after rides are already a major money burner.
They're saying that it costs too much. Oh, oh, wow. So they're trying to cut people out that recharge these scooters and pick them up from places. They're trying to rule them out or
Yeah,
push them out.
yeah. Well, what it seems like to me is that they're trying to remove as much human element as possible.
Yeah,
In some ways, that doesn't always work. I mean, we saw what happened with Dell Computers when they tried to outsource their customer service to India, and these people don't understand what you're saying. Um, it,
I can buy another deal again.
yeah, they don't understand what you're saying. The customer service is slow. They're repetitive in what they're asking you to do. Um, yeah, so there has to be some form of human element in dealing with certain ends of the market and certain products. You can't just like, oh, well, I'm just going to automate this, and that bike is just going to stand up by itself, and it will charge itself, and all this other stuff. Like somebody has to move this off the sidewalk,
Yeah,
or how does the bike know to drive itself along the same lines of traffic, whether or not there's going to be a crosswalk or there's intersectional traffic, because you can cause a major accident with a scooter, with an e-scooter, where a lifted truck may not be able to see it, or some yo-yo who's texting and driving may run over one of them, or may swerve from that scooter or that bike and run into something or somebody. There's all types of variables that come into play when it comes to talking about this.
Yeah, I was going to say to kind of follow up on that, Mike. By no means is a lot of the IoT tech that a lot of this stuff is stacked on. It's not perfect. Trust me, there's a lot of issues that we deal with, bird scooters. With our own platform, with our own rideshare platform, we're still doing some troubleshooting with a set of locks our own proprietary locks that we just received. And, we're testing several different softwares, and we're having different issues with each one. Right. So I can imagine, just given some of the issues that I run into with a lot of these scooters out here, connectivity issues, GPS, all that type of stuff. You get a scooter that goes offline, has a battery issue, shit, let's just say thing catches fire, with some people in it, and it's by itself. It's just going. I mean, there's a whole lot of question marks.
Hmm. All right, let me jump to this next one.
And just one quick thing I wanted to just address what Duplicat just said in the chat here. Swapping out the batteries would be cheaper and faster than picking up the scooters. There's Mike. Mike had profiled a scooter some time back on a previous hangout. I think it's by that company Scoot, where they have like a removable flat lithium-ion battery that goes beneath the chassis. So that is kind of like where it is going. It's just basically going to be removable packs.
Hmm. Because the dimensions are pretty much all the same on most of the scooters anyway, so it makes it cross
Yep.
compatible.
Yep.
All right, this one next one is from Tuna Cheki. The late South African president and African legend Nelson Mandela has been sent to space by a group of University Cape Town students. Zimbabwean-born filmmaker and UTC student Mikado was the brains behind the concept. The amazing fit was part of a virtual film entitled uh, Madiba Ascended, which is expected to be released soon. Whoops. Oh, sorry about that. Let me just start it over. Basically, what it looks like they did is they lifted a portrait of Mandela from a weather balloon,
Hmm.
and the weather balloon went into low Earth orbit, and that put it into basic space.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting that they would do something like that.
All right. I mean, because you just that alone, you do have the markings of a space program. Now I'm wondering if there were, other experiments or tests conducted while or if this was just purely symbolic.
I think this is more from a film for a film
Oh, this is for
production.
a film. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's kind of like, okay, if you can achieve getting a weather balloon up into low orbit, there's quite a few other things you can do.
Right. Most people want to have their ashes spread in the ocean or so on and so forth, but put mines in space, man.
Right.
Put mines in space. Put that on in a microsatellite and just leave it up there.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was saying. Like, that's right there. That's the ability to deploy microsatellites.
Yeah, I don't want to be buried. I want to be put out there.
Right. Keeping an eye on shit.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The new way of burying people. You don't have to dig a plot and nothing like that. Just toss
Nah,
caskets.
man. You have to come up with a new term because that'd be like that's like true ascension right there. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Shit, that's like ascension, like literally.
What was that, Lino?
Oh no, I said I'm listening. My internet was messed up. Had to
And he
start
just
the
he
phone.
just came back on. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, this next one is from space.com. NASA may decide this year to land a drone on Saturn's moon Titan. Spacecraft that have peered through the yellowish haze surrounding Saturn's moon Titan discovered a strange yet strangely familiar world where life could theoretically take root. Now, scientists want to return this time to buoyed by Earth's fascination with drone technology. That's precisely what a team of scientists working on a proposed mission called Dragonfly wants to do. Combine terrestrial drone technology and instruments honed by Mars exploration to investigate the complex chemical reactions taking place on Saturn's largest moon. Later this year, NASA will need to decide between the missions and another finalist proposal, which would collect a sample from a comet. Quote, at first blush, I think a lot of people think dragonfly sounds like a literal meaning of incredible. Melissa Trainer, a deputy principal investigator with the mission and a scientist at NASA, told Space.com. Not only is this an incredibly exciting concept with amazing, compelling science, but also it is doable. It's a feasible from it's feasible from a engineering standpoint. Dragonfly, if chosen, would aim to launch in 2025 and arrive at Titan in 2034. The world it will explore is oddly reminiscent of Earth for a strange moon so far away. On Earth, sunlight powers organic life growing in fields and forests. The same light triggers chemical reactions in Titan's upper atmosphere that create large organic molecules that down on pour down on the moon's surface, like Earth's rainwater. While while Earth has landscape made of rock covered in places by water, Titan's landscape is made of water ice covered in places by organic compounds. Interesting. Knowledge of those Titan traits come primarily from data gathered by the Cassini mission to Saturn's system and the Huygens probe that traveled with Cassini and touched down on Titan in 2005. Taken together, those two spacecraft completely reshaped scientists' ideas about the moon. So, I know, what's your take on this?
Isn't this the moon you want, well, planet ish you want to go to?
Oh, you mean from a satellite perspective? Yeah.
Mm. Uh, Titan. I understand that Titan is Earth-like. There are some different. When I say people that listen, when I say when we say Earth-like, we don't mean waterfalls running water. They have liquid hydrogen there instead of water or something. If I'm not mistaken. Um, I am all for exploration.
Hmm.
Um, I am all for that. Uh, eh, them sending a satellite to Titan, it's a go in my book.
Hmm.
Complex. You got any
Send it.
yeah, send it, man.
Send it.
Let's see what's on there.
Go there. See who's there. Say hello.
Hmm.
Hope they don't eat you.
Yeah. There may be many natural resources there that can be harnessed for who knows what.
It'll be a pain in the ass to bring it back though.
Yeah, but who says you have to bring it back? That can even propel. Say like there's a natural resource in abundance there, like major abundance since this Earth like, but it's not in abundance here. It's like really rare here. That
Hmm.
can force a like a gold rush type of deal, to go into space.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, that's gonna be, that's gonna be like the precipice for colonization.
Mhm.
Is resources, right? So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go there. You're gonna see if what is there is necessary for you to colonize, right? And then if
All
you
right.
can colonize, then you can begin to set up an infrastructure for resource extraction, and then you then also make your plans for expansion, and then that's when you start to create societies or civilization and all that other stuff.
Yeah, man.
Kind of like how what's been happening here on Earth. So
All right, next one is from ccn.com. Ford, IBM, LG partner to track your smartphone and car batteries on blockchain. South Korean battery maker LG Chem, tech giant IBM. You know what? We covered this. Yeah, we covered this already. Hmm. Yeah, we already covered this.
Okay, yeah, I thought it sounded familiar. Okay, gotcha.
And we can cover the next article.
Oh, okay, this one is from Fully Charged Show. Automotive startups always need to be viewed with a little caution, but as Johnny Smith discovers, Rivian have presented a very convincing launch, a large SUV and pickup truck at the LA Motor Show. The problem is this is more like a Ridgeline than it is a Ford Raptor.
Man, okay. You got to start somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to start somewhere. I guess, you know, I think you're right because, ridge lines weren't exactly used for utility, right? It was kind of like a boutique
It's not a
truck.
4x4. It's not a 4x4.
Yeah, it's kind of like a boutique truck. I don't know anybody who actually used a ridge line for anything other than just driving it around.
Well, they go to Home Depot and pick up stuff.
Some drywall.
Here go the haters.
So I'm trying to determine like what an application would be for this. Like, is it going to be much like the Ridgeline? Are we going to be picking up 2x4s? But I think though, okay, this is a logical step. If this an electric pickup truck, an electric truck, an honest stab at one was going to happen. Now it really becomes a matter of like the market kind of parsing all of this out and determining like where this is going to fall within that market. Is this a luxury vehicle? Is this kind of like a status symbol vehicle? Like kind of largely like how Teslas are? Or are guys looking at this and, well, it's saying right there, it's got a 410-mile range on it. So are people looking at this as a legit replacement for their work vehicles? Now, you can't beat the torque of an electric motor. So I would imagine that from a performance standpoint alone, there's things that this truck can do that ICE trucks, internal combustion engine vehicles, just simply look at it. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. That's a pickup truck. Jesus.
Yeah, but that's what nothing in it. You don't race pickup trucks, right? You kind of the utility purpose is more important than the 0 to 60 times.
Well, I mean, I'm merely mentioning it just from the standpoint of that's the performance capabilities of it, right? Now, what I'm saying is that an electric vehicle that has that type of performance capabilities has high torque. It has high torque attributes, and so for towing purposes, you can't beat that. I don't even think a diesel engine couldn't beat an electric motor in terms of torque production.
Yeah, because it's gears, right? I mean, you have multiple gears. You got to stroke through.
Yeah, there's a lot of power loss. So I mean, my question is Rivian, are they also positioning this vehicle to be a legit workhorse type of vehicle as well? That's my question. I mean, just from it in and of itself, what it is. I mean, I think it's cool, but it's just like a Tesla pickup though. From my initial just observation, it kind of just strikes me as like a Tesla pickup truck.
If Tesla built an SUV and a pickup truck, this would be
it.
Would be.
Yeah.
And who's to say that Tesla doesn't have something in the works already? Um, that they seem to work one product at a time rather than to just keep continuously launching products. Um, and probably for good reason, they have to go through crash regulations and things of that nature.
Well, in the last time they did that, they kind of got criticized for it, because remember when they revealed the 2020 Roadster,
Mhm.
Yeah, with the
they revealed the Tesla Semi also, right? And they also talked about all the different levels and of the 2020 Roadster and all the things that the truck can do. And they were kind of like, there were some criticisms, a little bit of criticisms, like, okay, I think Elon's really just trying to, like, pad the stats, so to speak. Just kind of like rolling these things out. And then they also released some sketches of a Tesla pickup. They don't I don't know if they prototyped one, but at that same time, they also released design drawings of a Tesla pickup also, but nothing in production quite to the level that Rivian's got.
Mhm.
I think the thing is nice. Uh, I've seen a video by Marquise Brownlee talking
Mm-hmm.
about Tesla killers, and he talked about this truck, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. Like the facts he put down in that, you got to pay attention to. What Rivian came out with this truck is manufactured in Illinois, American made. It's impressive. It's very The pickup truck is highly practical. The SUV, what they got out of it, obviously they were able to put a bigger battery in to get that 400 miles per charge.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say, "Oh, it's nice, it's blah blah blah." You have to say, "Well, what they did was really It's really impressive. The specs on it, what its capability is really impressive."
And I can actually even see the SUV even being like a quicker seller than the pickup.
Because this is as close as, remember, Mike, you always say, if Cadillac released Escalade, maybe that would change people's mind. This is as close to it as we have gotten so far.
No, that's not even close. Not even
Really?
close. Not even close. You ever been in an Escalade before? Those
No, I
things
ain't
are
been
no,
in
those things are
Escalade.
on another level of luxury. Just even Range Rover can't touch it. Range Rovers are pretty nice themselves, but the Escalade is on another level. It's like sitting in a cloud for the most part. You don't feel anything.
So that's why everybody get Escalades.
You have to own one or be in one to really understand them. They're on another
Okay,
level.
gotcha.
Gas mileage still sucks though.
It does, but
Well,
this
they have
thing
a
is
hybrid.
impressive.
They have a hybrid for the Escalades now, so it's a little bit different now.
That thing is still nice.
Hmm. I would say so.
Yeah, still I'm saying that SUV variant. I can see that one being a nice little
Now
sell.
they can partner with somebody.
Well, it depends on how much money they have to burn in order to survive, because EV markets are really tough to survive in. You have to move a lot of product in order to
Yeah,
make profit, to turn profit every quarter. And we see with Tesla. Tesla isn't doing too well in terms of turning profit. I mean, they put out a lot of product, but they haven't turned enough revenue to survive.
yeah.
They're building up more debt than they're turning profit. So a company like this getting in, it's easy for them to build an SUV because they built it from the ground up, and they don't really have to. They're not starting from a sedan or a hatchback or anything like that. That makes it easy for them because they put all their upfront investment into the SUV platform itself.
And the other thing too with EV platforms is that if you notice that you saw them, the guy, I guess he was interviewing like the Rivian rep, right? But
Hmm.
you saw the chassis of the vehicle.
Hmm.
Okay, the
Shape
the
order.
pickup the pickup and the SUV are on the same platform. It's the same chassis.
Yeah.
With EVs, you know, much of the construction of the vehicle is just basically in the base of the car, right? Everything sits on the base, the motor, the controller, the batteries, the suspension, everything sits on the base of the car. And from that one base, because it has a very basic shape to it, it's rectangular, right? So you're only literally just talking about the width and length of it, you know, in terms of proportions, but you can basically put any kind of shell on top of it and make it something else. So, what you were speaking to, Mike, it's like from the ground up,
Mhm.
it's an EV platform. If it's bespoke in its design, it's
Mhm.
cheaper to manufacture off of that. If your supply line is one that's getting you like all your batteries and your electrical components at a good cost, then yeah.
Mhm. Duplicat in the chat says folks that I talk to are waiting for an EV minivan.
That's VW.
Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Say it again, brother. Say that
That's
again.
VW.
Minivan? Who said a minivan? Oh,
They're bringing the VW's bringing the
fantastic.
bus back out. It's an electric one.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you're supposed to see that by next year.
Yeah. Hey Mike, did you see the one? They did one in a race livery.
Yeah,
It's an electric bus. You saw that one? That shit looks dope.
yeah. I think Paul was getting close to that. I think when he was in Germany, he might have been close to that.
Okay.
People
Hey,
sleep on
what's
the
going on,
minivan,
Paul?
man.
What would you say, Lionel?
I said people sleep on the minivan, man.
It's an electric bus, so and from my understanding, it has some autonomous vehicle function. So
Hmm.
Hey, let me throw this out at you all, cause I was thinking about this. My mind was going with these electric vehicles. I know it's hard to get in the market. Like you said, Tesla is the whale in the EV market, and even they're struggling. What if people make autonomous vehicles where, or autonomous, or no, not autonomous, because I'm using the tool. Okay, what do people make EVs that look like old American muscle cars?
they've done that already.
You're doing it.
Where? Who?
They're taking
Uh,
old muscle cars, and because there's a Ford that was brought out a few weeks ago, in a Corp, and I think a Porsche 356. They've taken out the engine. They just put electric. They put a electric motor inside there with the batteries. So
Like,
they're retrofitting all these old 60s and 70s cars with
with high output electric motors. Yeah.
yeah. I don't agree with it, but
I mean, what I see is, well, because you have a market where, because you have a lot of dudes that are now building pro touring cars. So they're building basically like they're they'll take like an old muscle car, but what they do is everything on it is modern. So new suspension, new suspension geometry in terms of like the A arms, the whole suspension kitting is all like newly designed. They'll take the old motor out and then throw an LS1 in it, right? Full fuel injection, you know, like modern transmission, like just the whole nine. They basically just take the shell of a muscle car and then dump modern everything into it. So doing that with taking that and then doing an electric variant, to me that's just going one step further.
yeah,
oh,
and
this is
don't forget
nice.
that they they have replica cars too, kit cars
Hmm.
that you can
Good
buy
card. Yeah.
that look like muscle cars and from the 60s and 70s, and you can just retrofit it with what you want. Would it cost that much? I think the price I had saw for a kit car fully put together was like maybe 80 to 100,000.
Hmm.
Now, if you try to buy that same muscle car and retrofit it, trust me, you're gonna spend at least a $500,000 easy.
Yeah.
Those
There's a
those uh those those old retro muscle cars are very expensive on the market right now.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's only a few companies that have the license to remanufacture all of the body panels and the chassis and all that stuff, like from the original templates.
Hmm.
Now I have like I in my head, dude. Like once the money is there, there's a. I was a big fan of like the old Ford Escorts, the ones that you saw like in Europe, like the
Oh,
MK.
the
Yeah,
Mercury.
Escort. Yeah, the MK1. Yeah, the MK1 and the MK2, like the old Escorts from like the late '60s and '70s.
Okay,
Uh,
okay. Haas
yeah,
ones.
yeah, that's the one. So there's a company that reproduces those things, man, in kit form. And like a lot of the guys out there, they'll take those kits and then they build up legit like Hillclimb and rally cars out of the kits. But I've always wanted to grab one of those kits and make an electric car out of it. So I'd contact them and say, "Hey, man, look, ship me over full, just a roller. I'll send them. I'd send them like the shell of an electric motor, and maybe just like a box that would represent like the dimensions of the batteries, and then I just say, hey, look, you know, build the compartments into that roller, send it my way, and then I just get the components and dump it in. So that's kind of like this. I have this dream for like a old retro electric car myself.
Mm. Paul Bryant in the chat asks, would DARPA share its 19 years of autonomous vehicle research and development tech with a car company?
Would they share it?
Unless they make it open source, I don't see why they would share it with one company and not the others, right? So it would have to be open source.
I mean, doesn't it typically it goes through them first, which then they make determinations as to like military application, which it then goes through its military application cycles, and then after that it cycles back into the consumer market. It cycles down into the consumer market. Isn't that sort of like the chain?
Right.
Yeah.
Typically, what they're willing to share is somewhat different. All right, this next one is from Russian Insight. Breaking. Russian scientists invent pocket-sized nuclear reactors that you can use as lifelong battery.
What? Okay, that's insane.
Right. So they basically developed a nuclear-powered battery pack that you could fit into something like a bird scooter or an autonomous vehicle.
Oh my god,
Holy crap.
that's crazy, man. Oh, okay, wait.
The
I'm trying to wrap
life
my head around it.
the lifespan on a battery like that would be anywhere between 35 to 50 years.
Huh.
Does it give off the the rays that a
The
normal nuclear reactor,
radiation.
yeah, radiation?
I don't think so.
Look at that.
I don't
Wait,
think.
was that in the form of a double A battery and a double A
Yes.
cell?
Yeah.
What the hell?
So they've been able to microsize the process of
Wow.
nuclear technology. Now, I've been following Russia for quite some time, and they've come out with a mini nuclear reactor that fits on the back of a pickup truck. It's already been developed and it's already been shipped out. So, um, I don't know anybody that's using it, but I know that the Russians had came out with that in like 2017.
Man, with this technology, it seems like we're gonna have cars that are shells, and you just walk around with your battery, and
I don't
you
think
just
it'll be
put.
that easy. I don't think it'll be that easy. I
Well,
think
not.
I think these applications that they're referring to might be for stuff like space travel, right? How long does it take to get to a certain destination, right? If it's taking 50 years, then that 50-year battery would be something that you need, right? A nuclear powered battery, right? for cars that they'll be looking more at something like hydrogen or something like that.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I can see hydrogen. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, you might need like a nuclear powered battery, man, if you're going to be going out in space and you have like some sort of tricoder device.
Or even just a space shuttle.
Mm-hmm.
Space shuttle with multiple batteries like that.
Yeah.
That's autonomous. That goes from one distance to the other, like just to drop off goods and things of that nature for mining purposes. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, that makes a lot of sense right there. You know, if it's going to be, if it's autonomous, then you need basically what would be like a relatively cheap power, long lasting power source. Then, I mean, yeah, look, if you cramming it into the size of a AA cell, then what the heck, man?
Or the AA cell by itself would it be enough sufficient?
No, I'm just saying
right?
like they're cramming the technology into the size of a AA cell. That's why I was tripping on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm looking
I
at
think.
this.
Go ahead, Lionel.
Go ahead. I'm looking at this VW ID.
Mm-hmm.
Man, these cars look nice, man.
Yeah. VW says they're serious about, the EV game, so we'll see.
Well, they would have to because of the diesel scandal, right?
That's kind of like they're only out.
They're nice.
What were you saying, Lionel?
No, I'm saying they're nice. They look very nice.
Paul said, nuclear waste is still waste. And where do you store the depleted radioactive material? No, thank you.
Shoot into the sun.
Yeah, Paul, there's that whole part.
But yeah, I mean, this is where we are right now in terms of battery capacity, laptops with, you know, nuclear, nuclear powered.
I mean, isn't there some sort of radioactive like cloaking materials that could be used?
What do you mean cloaking?
Well, I mean, like basically like basically neutralizes like whatever uh, radioactive radioactivity that's being emitted from it. Some sort of diode technology, or and there's some sort of I don't shielding. Well, I'm trying to find the right term.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that there's probably also some sort of technology that's been developed along with this, right? To neutralize, some of the radioactive waste concerns that Paul's alluding to. I would imagine that there's also been like some tech that's been developed along with that, like shielding technology or something.
I don't know anything about that. I think maybe Paul Bryant could probably answer something like that, but I don't know much about that.
He says fusion containment is the future, not nuclear. Zero radiation. Yeah, maybe he could, elaborate on that.
Mm-hmm. So we're in open mic right now. We can toss anything out there.
I see. Looking at a video from Engadget. It says came out 8 hours ago. Apple may be working on a game subscription service.
Well, yeah, I mean the gaming industry is a $100 billion industry, so
Gaming.
Apple is looking to diversify its portfolio as much as possible before they crash and burn.
Yeah. They got to this situation seemingly quick, but the breadcrumbs are there.
What do you mean?
Where all their revenue, well, not all, we'll say 6% of their revenue come from the iPhone, and that's not even, well, those sales are slowing down because of the non-innovation they've been doing over the past years. So it's seeming like they got to this point really quick, but the breadcrumbs been there.
No, it's been some years, man, and I think really what it was is just Apple just kind of they rested on their laurels, man, and relied on the brand, and not necessarily on the innovation. Like I said, man, for a company like Apple to literally only put out one new product in God knows how many years, that says a whole lot.
Well, I mean, and let's look at it from the devil's, uh, from Apple's perspective. I don't want to say the devil because it's a little bit satanic, but if you're Apple, how do you compete with Samsung and the rest of the Android manufacturers, including Google? Um, they pretty much cornered the market. You have Facebook with Oculus, and then you have HTC with Vive, and you have
Mm-hmm.
uh, Google with the Pixel, and then you have Microsoft with the Xbox. You're just not. There's so many areas that is already being dominated by other players that you're just not getting involved in. Um, yeah, you have the iPhone, and that's a hot seller, and you have the iPad, that's a hot seller. But what happens, when your design cycle is every 3 years or so, and people are holding on to the devices for a lot longer than that.
Yeah. I mean, I look, man, I've been saying it. I felt as though when Steve alluded to it some time ago about our car, that should have been their ace in the hole. That should have been the one that they were gonna, just basically, come out the box with it. Say like around 2020, I would have thought that over the course of this decade, that's what would have been in secret development or something along those lines, man. I mean, a company like that that's flush with cash, one, but two, doesn't necessarily have uh, a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of like its vision, where it's going. Like they don't. What are you going to do with the money? Okay, you're going to start losing market share. You're flush with cash. You're going to burn through that. You're not innovating anything. You're not bringing anything new to like they have. To me, they have to make a move in the automotive sector. That is the one place they can go.
Hmm. I would have also said TV, so TV space
Is it still there for them?
could be for if you're a Apple aficionado. You got the iPhone, you got the iPad, you got the iMac, you got the MacBook. What's stopping you from going out and just saying, "Screw it! I'm just going to get myself a nice thin bezeled TV that has a nice Apple logo when it starts up." Because you're already expanding. Now, if you look at the size of the new Macs, the new iMacs, what is it? 32 inches, I think, for the biggest version of iMac.
Big one, yeah. It's
You're
basically
already,
a TV,
yeah, you're already there. You might as well go up about 20 more inches and just call it a flat screen TV at this point.
right? Use the little wand remote.
Well, not even just that. Include the iOS inside the TV and then control it that way, right? You have your Apple TV bar at the bottom, and you kind of just um, either use your smartwatch, your Apple Watch, to semi control it, or use your iPhone to control it. I mean, there
Right,
there
right.
has to be some form of innovation thought process happening at Apple where they're looking at all of this and they're probably saying, yeah, that's a good idea, and somebody's probably saying, no, well, that's stupid. There's always some person to always challenge you in terms of technology to make sure there's a balance between ideas and concepts to production.
Mhm. Mr. Bryant,
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
What's going on, Paul Bryant?
good evening, sir.
How are you guys doing?
Show him, man. Show him.
Good, man. Doing good.
In 2012, I actually had the same thought right along the lines that Mike just said. I was actually under the impression that what Apple was going to do was Apple was going to make their own flat screen TV that was thin and basically and would literally combine the iMac into a 55-inch TV. So basically, what we've seen in sci-fi, you had this uh, iPad iPad thin television that's 50 to 60 inches that you put on your wall. It's your TV plus your iMac all in one. But for whatever reason, that never happened.
Because at one point they had two platforms. It was an eMac and then they had an iMac. That was the old tube-based um, cathode CRT-based Mac. It was the eMac. And then they had the iMac, and the iMac was this lamp sort of functional computer. Um, and then came the Power Mac, right? So there was much diversity in their desktop portfolio, but then it narrowed down. You know, they got rid of the eMac and then went with just the iMac, and then you had the Mac desktop.
Yeah,
You know, the Intel Mac at that point.
yeah. I personally, I excuse me. Personally, I call that the Tim Cook effect because Tim Cook has been running the company like a typical U.S. businessman. He's a bean counter, and he's a personnel manager. For him, it's about managing the numbers. It's not about the business or knowing the ins and outs of the business or having the vision to actually make products in that specific business. For him, it's just about manage the numbers, maximize shareholder profit by managing the numbers. Because you have to, I just have to think that from the day Steve died, there has been zero innovation from Apple. They haven't come up with a single new product. And Tim Cook even said that the iWatch was already in development when Steve died. So really, they literally haven't made a single new product.
It's
You
as
don't
if,
you don't consider the AirPods an invention?
oh shit, man. Look, it's just like it's as if, man, like the cancer news broke, and that company froze, and has remained frozen ever since.
Yeah,
He could have still been here had he not tried to self medicate himself.
Uh, uh,
exactly, exactly. And but if you look at the history of Apple, because I am all I was an Apple aficionado, and I used to buy Macworld magazine. Before Steve came back, Apple Apple was an afterthought in the tech world. It was literally Steve who turned that company around. So once he was gone, what was there? All right. By the time Steve died, Scott he got into it with Scott Forstall, and Johnny Ive kind of won that little internal battle. But for whatever reason, instead of letting Johnny Ive take the reins, he let Tim Cook take the reins. And you have to think that ultimately that has led to the downfall of the company. If nothing else, maybe maybe let Johnny Ive have more say as far as product development, or who knows? Maybe Johnny Ive is not a visionary. Maybe he just knows how to take the ideas that Steve had and make those into a reality. But for whatever reason, I understand that Steve said Tim Cook was his hand-picked successor, but Tim has done a horrible, horrible job because he's no visionary. He's no innovator, right? He is typical of U.S. corporate structure in this country since the 90s. All you need is a manager to manage the people. You don't have to know the business, just manage the people. And that has been the corporate mindset.
I don't even know what their stock is doing today, but let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
And I would even say just some speculations and thoughts on my side. Apple to me is kind of like in the same situation, similar to Chrysler was when Daimler Benz bought them. Like Apple is so big and unwieldy with whatever situation. It almost has the feel that in its current state, who would really want to take on everything that comes with Apple?
Paul, it's funny that you mentioned the whole Daimler Chrysler debacle, because the one thing that happened with that, and it kind of speaks to what you're talking about, taking on one company taking on the liabilities of the other. Okay, Mercedes quality took a dump, right? When Daimler Chrysler merged, and they were basically, you had Chryslers and Mercedes sharing platform parts and stuff like that. Go look at during that time when the Mercedes that were being produced at that time, they received the worst ratings, man. Mercedes' reputation went down the shitter. So you have to be very cautious of that.
Yeah, but the merger actually brought out the 300C, which is exactly what brought Chrysler back to its feet.
No, I'm talking about how Mercedes suffered. No, you're right about that. I'm talking about how Mercedes was affected by it.
Yeah, but that is there is the as the saying goes, the devil is in the details, and that was actually coincidental with Mercedes followed BMW with the globalization program because no matter where in the world a BMW was sold, they were all built in Germany. Same thing with Mercedes Benz. When they went to the globalization program, they said if we're going to sell cars in India to a large extent, they're going to be built in India. If we're going to sell cars in America, they're going to be built in America. If we're going to build cars in, say, in the whichever larger countries, we're going to build them there. So now what happened was the German companies, they used to over design things. Like you could literally, like they would over design door hinges. Like they were built where you could take 500, 600 pounds and just put them on the end of a door. Wouldn't affect the door hinge. So they started saying, all right, instead of over designing these things, we're just going to make them just good enough. That was number one. Number two, when they went to the globalization program, if a car was built in that country, they started using part supplies from that country. So you started seeing the lower quality
Mhm.
and lower build quality and lower engineering native to that country. So it may have had a Mercedes name. It may have been built in South Carolina, but only the chassis was built in Germany and shipped over here, and everything else
Anything
was
else?
literally built here. Okay, and
Yeah.
there was a study that was done in 93, 94. Don't quote me on that. And said that the quality of German cars that were built at the Tennessee Mercedes plant and the South Carolina BMW plant versus BMWs and Mercedes that were built in Germany was night and day. And the UAW jumped on that report to have it suppressed because it basically said that anything built by the UAW and built by US part suppliers was shit.
Shit. Yeah.
Okay, so as I said, the devil is in the details. So if you look at German cars built in Germany, they're still that same high quality, even though they don't design them to late 80s, early 90s standards. They're still better than what's built here or built around the world. That globalization program, it lowered costs because you weren't shipping entire vehicles all over the world, but the quality suffered.
No, that man, that's you hit the nail like right on the head with that. That's exactly what it was. Because yeah, that was, again, when that merger happened, and that's exactly what happened with Mercedes. They started sourcing all of various components of it from different places, and it wasn't a complete German built vehicle anymore. And
Right.
yeah, from that point, it just quality just suffered.
I mean, listen, Germans are the best engineers in the world. All right. And the thing with German products, they're over designed and they're over complicated so they don't break. The problem is they're overcomplicated and they're over designed. So when they do break, they're a bitch to fix.
Yep.
But that's the deal walking in the door when you deal with any German products, whether it's cars or kitchen appliances, anything German.
Hmm.
Now, Paul, what's your take on that nuclear battery?
I don't like it. I am against it because nuclear power is not the answer. Irradiating things is not the answer because at the end of the day, whether it's the size of Chernobyl, probably a bad example, or the size of an earbud, you're still dealing with nuclear power, nuclear waste materials, the inherent radiation. Personally, I am against it. I am against it. I am against it. And people say that, well, nuclear power is cleaner than fossil fuels. That's not true. There is zero air emissions, but you have nuclear waste. Look at the Fukushima plant in Japan, which is still leaking, by the way, all these years later, because I still follow that story through alternative media sources. You know, the CERN project, I keep beating that dead horse, but fusion containment is the future. It's the answer. It works. It's not viable for space exploration yet because you have to put more energy in than what you get out. But really simply, it's the sun contained in a magnetic bottle. When you combine or fuse hydrogen atoms, gravity is produced, heat is produced, usable energy is produced. The magnetic force contains in the fusion reaction. The stronger the reaction, the stronger the magnetic field. That's how our sun works. So fusion containment is literally the sun just on a much smaller scale. There's no radiation, immense energy is produced because chemical propulsion is not viable. If you're telling me it's taking 2 years with rockets to get to Mars or 3 or 4 years to get to Saturn, that's not that's not practical. That's not viable. You need other sources of propulsion.
What
So
type of I was gonna say, but what type of propulsion system do you use with that type of energy source? I mean, is it like some sort of pulse engine or something? Some
well, whether it's fusion containment or any of the others, any of the other sources of energy that are being developed around the world, nuclear and chemical are not viable because they're too slow. Now, for if we're talking, say, interstellar travel, right, actually between planets outside of our solar system, this is going to sound crazy, but forget what you've seen in television or movies. Even light speed is not the answer. To travel from one end of our solar system to the other at light speed takes 8 minutes. To travel from our planet to the closest star to us at light speed would take 1,000 years. So even light speed is not the answer. So something else has to be worked out, whether it's folding space, bending space, something faster than light speed, whatever the answer is. Chemical propulsion and even nuclear propulsion, they're not the answer.
yeah,
Because,
I was gonna say like bending space.
right, or bending space and or faster than light. It is not a it is not a fact that nothing travels faster than the speed of light. From what we know,
From what we yeah, I was gonna say from what we're able to
from what
observe,
we observe, nothing can travel faster than the
right?
speed of light.
Or what mechanisms that we have that are able to determine speed, right? Based on the calculations that we have available to us, right? We're able to make a determination that there isn't anything faster than quote unquote the speed of light.
Right.
But yeah.
And the only reason that was only said is because the only thing that we have been able to observe is the speed of light. But if there are other particles, for lack of a better term, or other modes of travel faster than light that don't require bending space, just because we can't see them doesn't mean that they exist. And that's how a scientist thinks, and that's how you have to think when looking at these things.
I mean, do you think also that maybe that these sorts of energy sources would be used for maybe even something like creating like a jump room, for example? So now you're just talking about something that has that type of power, right? Could theoretically power something that could just enable you to just basically jump dimensions.
Good question.
Right. So then I mean, because like, okay, because I'm thinking like, okay, are we going to power some sort of motor or something with this? But then now when you say, okay, well, it contains the power of the sun in a bottle. I'm like, well, shit. I mean, something like that, you could power something that would just basically enable you to just jump dimensions.
Well, one, that's viable. That works right now. Fusion containment works right now. What they're developing is they're trying a way to make it viable because the idea is you want more energy coming out than you're putting into it.
Yeah. Right.
Right now, they're saying that it takes a lot of energy to go into it to get the reaction started. If to be viable, you basically want to be able to flip a switch, whatever it takes to start the reaction, and then it's it's self-sustaining. But for right now, it takes so much to get it started. But as far as what you said is two things for jumping dimensions. There's a lot of literature out there. There's a lot of claims. I won't go farther than that right now because there's a lot of stuff I haven't actually seen. So I'm just gonna, leave people to their own devices as far as those
Hmm.
claims. But as far as powering things, see now we're talking to right now, 2019. Now we're talking to energy production. So you're looking at your oil and gas companies, and if you're talking all of these sources of energy, one, they're not fossil fuel. So that one literally puts them out of business overnight, which means they're going to suppress that. Two, unless they can find a way to monetize it. Once they find a way to monetize it, then we will have it. But until then, we're stuck with the fossil fuels.
Yeah. I just want Ray Cherry saying he two things. He said nuclear is cleaner, even with the waste. We don't have to worry about becoming Venus as with carbon emitted from fossil fuels.
Again, I strongly disagree because the shortest half life of anything nuclear waste that we produce is what, 3,000 years or 10,000 years? So where do you put this stuff? And it piles up. And look at Fukushima, all right? At January of 2017, fish were caught off the coast of California
California. Yeah.
with radioactive iodine from water from the Fukushima spill. Right?
Yeah,
Not
there's people out there, man, that I've seen video of this. I haven't verified this for myself, but
mm,
like further up Central Coast and stuff like that, they take a Geiger counter, right, and they just stick it in the water. They're getting readings. And this is all, yeah,
exactly. All right. That, as I said, coming in, people claim the claim has been for nuclear power reactors for electricity generation. It's clean, it's safe, there's no emissions. There are no air emissions, but it generates nuclear waste. And that waste is literally radioactive and deadly to all biological life for thousands of years before you reach the half life. The half life is when it loses 50% of the radioactivity, where then it's to a level where at human exposure, any effects can be treated with drugs and or chemicals and you won't die. I don't know about you. I haven't figured out the way that I can live for thousands of years yet. At least not in this one body. So I totally disagree with that. Nuclear power is not the answer. Irradiating our our planet is it's doing the same thing that we do with fossil fuels. It creates a harmful waste.
And he also said nothing with mass can travel faster. I think he's speaking to the speed of light. Though quantum spooky action at a distance is FTL communication.
Right.
You want to go ahead, Paul?
No, finish. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, well, I wasn't. That was the reason why I was thinking more of interdimensional travel, right? Not necessarily through like a vessel like being propulsed at very high speeds, but we're talking about uh, being able through fusion power to be able to generate enough power to just basically step through like a Stargate or some shit and just
Uh,
through what's that?
no, I was just going to say that I think that the Chinese and the Russians and the Americans were working on teleportation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and part of where I'm saying this is because you've already had, and Mike, maybe um, you can even speak to some of this as far as research that's been done in MIT labs and in other research labs where they've been able to bio relocate particles, right, from one area to another, basically, transferring it, like taking a particle from one place and then placing it right into the other. Okay, that's basically a rudimentary form of teleportation. So we're basically now just talking about uh, the amount of power made available to do the same thing with a larger cluster of particles or atoms, or in this case, our own bodies, for this matter.
Well, see, here's the thing, right? Generally, the way our science has worked is one thing builds upon the next, upon the next, upon the next, upon the next.
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm saying is, you know, there are astrophysicists and quantum physicists who say, you know, faster than light travel is possible. That even the theory that nothing with mass can travel, that they've said that even that theory is based on what we know so far up to this point, what we've been able to observe so far up to this point. To say that it is impossible is not, it's not, it's not smart for lack of a better term. Again, I'm no scientist. I'm not coming in, but there are astrophysicists, scientists who say that we don't know that theory is a theory. It's an idea. All they're saying is we don't know if that's possible. If our level of science and level of technology advances to a higher point faster than light, travel may be possible because there's so much science that we take for granted now. At one point, it was thought of as impossible.
Right, and it's commonplace today.
Right. And there were I have been studying Tesla's works for years, and there's a lot of things that he worked on and studied, as did Heisenberg,
Mm-hmm.
Werner Heisenberg. So there was a lot out there.
Well, I mean, and again, like what I'm kind of like postulating here and asking about. I mean, it's not purely just being fed off of my imagination, but I am kind of referencing, a lot of the experimentations and things that Nikola Tesla uh, did conduct, because he literally spoke to the multidimensionality of frequency in the energy fields that he was working in. He openly spoke about this stuff.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, okay, well, what I'm kind of like throwing out here isn't even anything that's kind of based just purely off my imagination. But I mean, hell, if Nikola Tesla's even telling you, yeah, I'm tapping into other dimensions and shit, man. And if I tune this here, I can basically just render that building into a pile of rubble. And if I do this here, you know, so we've seen it, we've seen it from people who kind of gave it sort of like a relatory, explanation, and so that's why it's not so difficult to kind of think about it and say like, well, shit. I mean, if you did have like a massive power source, then you know it's not as if that wouldn't be feasible or possible.
Exactly.
And then now we're actually getting out of the discussion of whether we're going to be traveling faster than the speed. No, we're talking about just going through dimensions. That's a whole different method of. It's like traveling by car versus traveling by train.
Bro, if we're talking traveling by dimensions, we're talking the difference between walking and traveling by jet. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the difference that we're talking about. Um, anyone, for those who are so inclined, because I understand for most people, they just don't care, right? They rather have a 12-hour hangout to talk about hair weave. But if you look at if you look at Tesla's Tesla's later works and later research, where he spoke about what he called the ether and what he called the true nature of gravity, right? Some very
Hmm.
valuable reading, especially when you look at the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and his work, and how the work of these two giants dovetail. There's so much out there.
Hmm.
Again, I'm no scientist, but just because a lot of people with alphabets at the end of their name doesn't mean they have all the answers. Because a lot of Tesla's work, a lot of scientists said he was wrong, he was wrong, he was wrong, and they begrudgingly admitted the things that he discovered and invented. The same with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So,
And the funny thing about that, Paul, is that you say they begrudgingly they admitted, and within that admittance was also the admittance of the fact that they still didn't understand what he knew.
exact, bro, exactly. And the thing is, all right, listen, what I'm about to say is going to sound like science fiction. But here's the thing: Tesla designed he discovered it, he invented it, and designed it, an anti gravity
I know that guy.
vessel. Yeah, it was called,
Heard of.
it was called Noah, but,
Yeah.
uh,
Noah Project.
right. And he said, the key components: liquid mercury, electromagnets, high RPM, right?
Hmm.
And it has been tested and it has been developed. Bro, you can even research it and Google it. All right. He developed a lot of work with electromagnets and superconductors.
Hmm.
All right, that you can Google and work. In fact, you know what? I'll even I'll send a few links through the email
The email.
chains,
Okay.
so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. All right, and we're talking about things that Tesla was working on in the 1920s and 30s and 40s.
Do you know what happened with all of his patents?
The day, the day that Tesla died, either by that night or the very next day, the U.S. government broke into his apartment and took all of his work.
All of them.
One
I was
of his,
wondering if there was anything that didn't get to him.
one of his, one of his assistants, a physicist, managed to take some things and keep for himself.
Okay.
And one of those designs were the designs for the anti-gravity craft and a few other designs, as well as the broadcast energy transmitter, the I believe so, the Wardcliffe Tower that he
Hmm.
built out in Long Island that worked.
That warped. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Okay, where do you think the idea of wireless charging came from?
Yeah. It came from that.
It
Yeah,
keep,
that's what he
keep
explained. He explained that without one of the capabilities that thing had to do was send energy
right
from point
through
A to
the
point
air,
B. Yep.
right through the air. And he invented that. Tesla talked about. I think I sent it, but I'll send it again if I didn't through the email chain. I believe it was 1923 or 1927. Tesla talked about the cellular phone and the broadcast energy transmitter.
It was in the 20s, yeah.
As I said, I've been studying his work and Heisenberg's work for a long time.
And you know what's funny, Paul? You know, you mentioned that, and you know, one other thing that I think is a very interesting aside that's largely related to what we're talking about. You guys realize that the first electric car was built, well, I think it's like uh 1860, I think it was. It's like kind of starting beginning into the late 19th century. It was in the late 1800s, some mid to late 1800s when the first electric car was built. So you're talking about 19th century, you had an electric car that was actually built. You're talking about early 20th century, wireless energy transference technology and all this type of stuff. And we think that we're somehow like advanced today.
A lot of technology is literally suppressed. And you know what? And if you look at what is one of the biggest limitations to current technology, energy production. As
Mhm.
small as a cell phone is, as small as an iWatch is, the size is large. The thickness is largely dictated by the size of what? The
The
battery.
battery.
If you could wirelessly send, if you can wirelessly charge, which you can, if you can wirelessly send energy, you can literally make a computer as thin as a sheet of paper. Energy production. That is one of the largest hindrances to our human technology. Energy
Some years,
production.
yeah, some years ago, HP came out with a battery called a slice battery. So it's about probably about the size of a Manila envelope in terms of a battery. That was like 20, 2010, 2011 or something like that.
Well, one of the things that's being mentioned is uh, so Professor John Goodenough, the guy who invented the battery technology that was deployed on the EV1.
Hmm.
So he has a patent for a sodium glass battery, right? So this thing, like you're talking about on extremely, extremely, extremely thin wafers of glass. You could basically make batteries with a sodium wafer, sandwiched between these glass panels with a charge that's sent through it. So there's a lot of battery technology that's coming to the forefront now, man, where the size is getting smaller, 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 smaller.
Speaking of new technology, complex, you're aware because we had this conversation before about a new miracle material called graphene.
Yes.
Graphene, for those who don't know, is, I want to say, 85 times lighter than titanium, which is itself 7 times lighter than steel.
Steel. Yep.
And graphene is 100 times stronger than titanium. And titanium is 10 times stronger than steel. So, to put that into proper perspective, cycling is one of my passions. I have the largest size bike that you can buy off the rack. My bike is aluminum. It weighs 19 pounds,
Mhm.
19 and a half pounds. My same size bike, if it was graphene, wouldn't you would weigh 1/3 of a pound,
It would weigh like it would be really light.
like ounces, just ounces. And strength, it's 100 times stronger than titanium. So
Yeah.
the next question is, well, great. Why isn't everything being made now in graphene? price. It costs a lot of money to make graphene products.
Well,
But as the price comes down, you may,
now we've had prior discussions about utilizing hemp
yeah,
to produce graphene because you're literally just talking about the biomass and the hemp biomass, the atomic structure of it. If you look at the atomic structure of hemp biomass
mhm,
and graphene, it's damn near the same. And it literally graphene derived from hemp nanocarbons. It's the characteristics are damn near identical. There's a guy, John. What I'm saying, John, is it John Murray Smith? I'm trying to remember his name. Robert Murray Smith. He's on YouTube, and he's a battery maker. And he has some videos that he did from last year where he made some hemp batteries. And so these hemp batteries outperform lithium ion batteries.
well, again, man, it's future tech, man.
Yeah.
Just future tech, you know.
Yeah. Reynold Chariot even says material science is the hot wave at the moment. It is.
And you know, the only the only thing with a lot of technologies that can literally change the earth is they can't be monetized. All right. So current look who controls this world right now. All right. The large corporations, oil and gas, materials,
Mm-hmm.
energy production. Anything that they can't monetize, they suppress until they can
Until it can be
monetize it.
monetized.
Right. When
Yep.
they figure out a way to monetize broadcast energy, it will be commonplace. Until then, suppressed. When they figure out a way to monetize graphene products and hemp products to bring the cost down and monetize it, it will become commonplace.
You know, not to go on a slight bent or anything, but there's an anime called Dimension W for anybody who wants to check it out. And it deals with what you just talked about, Paul. Right. The globalized distribution of broadcast energy. And in this anime, it's basically there's a global conglomerate. So it's comprised of 6 different global regions, right, that represent parts of a large global energy conglomerate. What they all do is they source their energy from what has been discovered as a dimension W, right, where there's just like all this massive energy they could just pull right from it and then just broadcast it out. And then, just like with anything, though, there's corruption, there's abound, and right, that's where the whole story comes in. But just the concept of what you mentioned, like there was an anime that I could relate to that basically created a scenario, right? The scenario of it was based on the same thing, like the global distribution of broadcast energy.
Check this out. Space. You take solar panels, you make them literally miles long because you're in space. You have the room. You
Mhm.
put them in space. You take the energy collected from these solar panels, which are miles long, broadcast energy down to Earth. Free broadcast energy around the world, literally, for anyone. How do you monetize that?
How do you
And
how do you
and
monetize it?
and that technology exists right now. It's existed for decades. Think about everything I just said. We've had it for decades. Why is it not in implementation? Can't be monetized, so it gets suppressed.
Well, I mean, isn't anything? Um, I mean, anything that we do, and I mean, I guess this kind of speaks to like a larger sort of like uh, question of what's the, what's the true nature of what it is that what and why we create things, right? Like, is all ultimately to be monetized? And I mean, what does that kind of speak to? You know, just the the greater scale of things, because like you say, like, you know, there's ideas that could literally, you know, take us like years into the future, right? But we can't make money on it, so we're not gonna do that right now.
Well, you know what? See, now that takes the conversation into a completely different area, which is another area that's kind of near and dear to my heart, because now we're talking the evolution of the race.
Mm-hmm.
Because, hello, people out there, there's only one race, the human race, okay? All that black, white, Asian talk stuff, that's, listen, leave all that stuff at the door. There's only one race, human. But I digress. So, until humanity as a whole evolves to a point where greed is no longer part of quote unquote human nature,
Mm-hmm.
someone is going to want to have something that someone else doesn't have. Someone is going to want to control others. So, whatever means that is, whether it's controlling resources, right now it's controlling resources through this thing called money, which isn't even real. That's a construct. We as a group assign this thing called money, and it has value. But again, now we're talking, thinking on higher levels. But
Yeah.
you know, that's an entirely different conversation that most people just don't want to have.
Well, and I mean, it's like, you know, I think, I mean, you know, in order for some sort of like Wakanda type, uh, you know, existence to exist, you know, you have to, as you would say, you know, think it through. You know what I mean? You have to kind of think above. You know, it involves engaging, you know, the intellect as well as the imagination, right? Because that's how innovations come about. Innovations aren't things that are already in existence.
Well, you know, as I say, we have to think our way through because as of right now, as a race, as a species, right, we're still driven by the basest, lowest nature. Since we've been talking for the past, what, 5, 10, 15 minutes about technology, as long as we've been on this planet so far, nothing has advanced technology faster than war. The greatest technological
Hmm.
developments and advances have been led by the military because somebody wants a bigger bomb, a bigger gun, a faster plane, a bigger and better, more efficient way to kill people. And that's been the greatest advancement of human technology thus far. So until we as a human species, as a human race advance beyond that to that point where we as a race elevate our thinking and evolve beyond that.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
Randall Cherry was saying, he said we would need a whole new system for driving human beings. Like, you know, I think how do I put this? Um, I want to say that, you know, if we're to kind of look at, you know, just history, and just history in the context of like just civilizations and how people existed and how they lived. I mean, there's things you can take away from every epoch, every era, every you know, every period of time, right? Where you could say, you know, that would be beneficial in this time. You could take, you know, some detail of life and say, you know, that would be good for this time. And you can kind of piece together what would work, what would be ideal for a future forward type of living environment. You know, humans have to create that for themselves. They have to make that up. They have to make a determination as to what's important, and you know, determine how they can live with a general agreement of what's important, and some sort of merit how do you say it?
meritocracy.
Yeah, yeah, you know, based system where, you know, it's everything's shared, right? Co-op based. We talk about co-op all the time. You know, moving more to instead of producer consumer into more of a co-op, shared interests. What's that, Mike?
Social enterprise.
Yeah, yeah. Moving, shifting to that type of model. I mean, these models already exist. Matter of fact, they were employed in times past.
That's kind of how China keeps its people employed through these state sponsored enterprises, social enterprises.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Lionel, you have any last thoughts? Oh, Lionel's gone? Yeah, Lionel's gone. So I think we'll shut it down for now. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back on Wednesday with Geopolitics, episode 135. And you all have a good night.
Peace out, y'all.